John Bonham, found dead in bed yesterday in London at the home of the group's guitarist, Jimmy Page.
John Bonham, drummer with the British rock group Led Zeppelin since its inception in 1968, was found dead today at the home of a friend in Windsor, England. Bonham was 32.
Forget about what everybody tells you you're supposed to be doing when you're listening to us and enjoy yourself.
Jimmy Page grew up in a war-torn, heavily rationed England. He occupied himself by playing a guitar he found at the house his family moved into in Epsom. He dragged his guitar to school and anywhere else he could manage it.
What are your two names? Yours is?
James Page.
Can you move on? What are you going to do when you leave school? Take up skiffle?
No, I want to do, biological research.
Well, how did you become a session guitarist? I don't know. Perhaps I thought I had the feel for
it. It was just very, very difficult. It was an uphill struggle to keep the message, and they just didn't want to know anymore. So eventually that band split.
By 1968, at the age of 24, after years of a session guitarist and then a yardbird, Jimmy Page was ready to throw everything into a new ensemble, which would become one of the most legendary bands of all time, Led Zeppelin. Jimmy Page assembled the group one by one. John Paul Jones, a bass player from his former session days, singer Robert Plant, recommended during his quest to find a singer, and drummer John Bonham, who came through Plant. The first time they played together in a basement room in London, there was undeniable chemistry.
So I tracked up to Birmingham and saw him, and I was amazed, and suddenly it all started to come together in a very short time. He was very blues orientated, and of course I've been through that as well. And then I played him a lot of other things which I planned to sort of attempt, like Babe, I'm Going to Leave You and things like that, which, had a totally different approach to the way that it had originally been done by Joan Baez.
Although I had in mind a very powerful drummer, I wasn't ready for John Bonham. I must say he was beyond the realms of anything that I could possibly have imagined, It's absolutely phenomenal.
Without Bonzo, the band wouldn't have meant anything at all. Sure, I mean, he was the emulsifying agent, he was everything. He was the whole core of the thing. He was the guy who stopped it being just another rock band, really. At least in its performance, the writing. I mean, Jimmy's approach was so unique, and is so unique. But I mean, Bonzo's whole delivery was the thing that made it what it is.
Originally calling themselves the New Yardbirds, they soon changed their name. The story goes, Page was previously keen on creating a supergroup with Jeff Beck and The Who's Keith Moon and John Entwistle. Moon remarked that the project would go down like a lead balloon. Page changed it to Zeppelin, the largest balloon of all, then changed the spelling of lead to avoid any mispronunciation. And with that, the New Yardbirds became Led Zeppelin.
In the early days, I had an idea of what I thought was right within those days. And it didn't really matter whether it was going to sort of happen or not within one's mind, because it was so enjoyable to be playing. And one could feel the chemistry was there even from the very first day of a rehearsal, that there was something there that was definitely going to be really good and really enjoyable to be part of.
Jimmy's vision for the band is a collage of sound, combining gentle folk music with the potency of the blues and a harder, more psychedelic sound he'd experimented with as a yardbird. With Jimmy's aggressive guitar riffs, Bonham's intensity on drums, Plant's raw, moving voice, and Jones's precision on bass, Led Zeppelin develops a heavier, previously unheard sound, and with that, hard rock is born. The band rehearses and begins playing around Europe, but are received with a mix of enthusiasm and criticism, as some find their new sound too loud. Then they head to their first show in the US, eventually in San Francisco, where they really take off. Led Zeppelin's bluesy, high-energy live shows quickly catch the attention of American audiences. Their powerful sound is a departure from the more mellow sounds of the time. Almost overnight, Led Zeppelin takes the US by storm after the Summer of Love era begins to feel overplayed. In November 1968, Jimmy Page travels to New York with manager Peter Grant, armed with master tapes of the group's first album. Ahmet Ertegun meets with Page and Grant at Atlantic's New York office. Atlantic Records signed Led Zeppelin on November the 11th, 1968, announcing a $200,000 advance. This is a monumental sum at the time. By the time Led Zeppelin releases their self-titled debut album in January 1969, they've already built up a significant fan base. They receive some positive reviews, but also draw criticism from some music critics who find their style to be too aggressive. However, the band continues to gain fans and become known for their high-energy live performances. Refusing to release a single and instead forcing the audience to buy the entire album, Led Zeppelin II is released in October 1969. The album debuts at number 1 on the charts in both the US and the UK, and it quickly becomes one of the best-selling albums of the year. Notable for its heavy blues-inspired rock and roll, while featuring some of the band's most iconic tracks, such as Whole Lotta Love and Ramble On. Led Zeppelin II knocked the Beatles' Abbey Road out of the number 1 spot in the United States in 1970. The album's success helped cement Led Zeppelin's place as one of the biggest bands in the world.
You know, the old thing about being able to whistle the tune, being able to hum the tune as you go away, I don't think I could hum any of your stuff.
No, but I think it's changing. That's the main thing, you see. I think that's why the awards have changed, because the kids are changing for a start. And so is the music changing. And I think, well, there's already a single out of Whole Lot of Love, an orchestra playing it, which is quite interesting, really. The flute plays what the lead vocal would do.
So you're saying that your fans don't necessarily want to whistle the tunes, to hum the tune, but they're much more sophisticated than, you know, my generation.
I think so. Not in that sense. I think these days that let's say the public, you know, it's not just say the kids, because we've had sort of all sorts of people at concerts, you know. I think that they're coming to listen to what you're playing and not just to look at you and see what you are. I mean, I remember when I was, let's go back a few years, when I first went to see the Beatles, because we've mentioned them a few times, it was to look at them, you know. It wasn't, you didn't really bother what you were listening to.
Yes.
And today, it's not what you are, it's what you're playing. And
well, this is interesting. We've heard that the personality cult is dead, but I'm still going to put one of those kind of questions. I mean, I wouldn't know whether you're a millionaire or not, but you must be quite rich now. What's it like having money?
Well, John's laughing because I think I must spend a good £5 a week, and I think goat and chicken food.
This is keeping your goats, yes,
right, yeah.
In Kidderminster.
Yeah.
But having paid for the goat bill, you've got a little bit left over, have you?
Oh, a few shillings and groats and so on. No, I think it all boils down to, well, it keeps boiling down. But, I mean, in our position, we've spent years and years on the road, sort of playing in little church halls and being beaten up and bricks thrown through the van windows and everything. And to have money at last is just another figure in my mind of mass acceptance, which is what we all work for. I mean, everybody, however much they like to deny the fact, really wants, in the end, to be accepted by the majority of people for being either a talent or a commodity, you know. I think that we've reached that stage now, and it's left to us to keep on coming up with something good, so as we'll be at the Melody Maker Poll Winners Awards, blah, blah.
Yeah, for a few years to come.
Yeah.
Robert Plant, John Bonham, thank you very much.
Led Zeppelin III is released in October 1970 and is again met with a huge amount of hype. This album is a departure from the hard rock sound of their previous albums and featuring a more acoustic, folk-inspired sound. The album showcases the band's versatility and songwriting skills with iconic tracks such as Immigrant Song, Gallows Pole, and Since I've Been Loving You. Despite the album's departure from their previous sound, it was also a huge commercial success, and it further solidifies Led Zeppelin's status as one of the most popular bands of the time. While Led Zeppelin's second and third albums are incredibly successful and influential, they're not without their critics. Led Zeppelin's lyrics are often criticized for featuring hedonistic themes. Critics claim that this is symptomatic of a broader cultural trend. The band then heads to Headley, Grange to live and work on their fourth album together. Originally a 3-story stone structure used as a workhouse for the poor, infirm and orphaned in Headley, Hampshire, England. Headley Grange is run down and said to have been haunted. A black Labrador retriever seen roaming the grounds becomes the inspiration for their song Black Dog. Page elaborates on the living arrangement in a 2010 interview. The reason we went there in the first place was to live in a situation where you're writing and really living the music. It was all of us really concentrating in a concentrated environment, and the essence of what happened there manifested itself across 3 albums. Led Zeppelin IV is released in November 1971, becoming one of the most highly anticipated rock albums of all time. The album's release is shrouded in mystery, as the band decides not to include their name or any album title on the cover, and instead feature 4 mysterious symbols that would come to be associated with each of the band members. The decision only adds to the album's mystique and helps generate even more excitement and buzz around it. Zeppelin IV features the band's most iconic tracks, including Stairway to Heaven, Black Dog, and Rock and Roll, and showcases their incredible musicianship and songwriting skills. Led Zeppelin IV's enduring popularity and influence cannot be overstated, and it remains one of the best-selling albums of all time. It's been certified 23 times platinum in the United States alone, and it continues to be celebrated and analysed by fans and critics alike. The album's iconic cover art and mysterious symbols have also become iconic in their own right and are recognised around the world as symbols of Led Zeppelin's influence and legacy. Epic live performances become a staple of every Led Zeppelin concert, renowned for their high-energy shows, which often include extended improvisations and solos. Led Zeppelin are one of the first bands to incorporate pyrotechnics and other theatrical elements into their concerts, creating a sense of spectacle that was unprecedented at the time. Jimmy Page just pulling out his cello bow electrifies the crowd. Some shows create such a frenzy that riots break out, and people often get arrested and dragged away. Led Zeppelin concerts in the 1970s become a cultural phenomenon. To see Zeppelin live was to be part of music folklore. The band goes on to release several more albums, including Houses of the Holy in 1973, featuring a more diverse sound than the band's earlier work, incorporating elements of funk, reggae, and folk. It includes the hits Dire Maker, Over the Hills and Far Away, and The Song Remains the Same. Physical Graffiti arrives in 1975. This double album features some of Led Zeppelin's most epic and ambitious work, with songs like Kashmir and In My Time of Dying. It also includes some of the band's more experimental tracks like Bronya R. Presence is released in 1976. This album has a more stripped-down sound than some of the band's earlier work, with a focus on heavy, riff-driven rock. It includes the tracks Achilles' Last Stand and Nobody's Fault But Mine. In Through the Outdoor, their last album, is released in 1979. This album features a more polished sound, with more emphasis on keyboards and synthesizers. It includes the tracks Fool in the Rain and All My Love. Each of these albums has its own distinct sound and style, and showcases Led Zeppelin's incredible musical range and creativity.
John Bonham, found dead in bed yesterday in London at the home of the group's guitarist, Jimmy Page.
John Bonham, drummer with the British rock group Led Zeppelin since its inception in 1968, was found dead today at the home of a friend in Windsor, England. Bonham was 32.
Led Zeppelin disbands in 1980 following the tragic death of their drummer, John Bonham. Bonham died after a night of heavy drinking. The band members are devastated by the loss of their friend and bandmate, and they decide that they cannot continue without him. In a statement released to the press on December 4th, 1980, the remaining members of Led Zeppelin announce they will not continue without John Bonham. We wish it to be known that the loss of our dear friend and the deep respect we have for his family, together with the sense of undivided harmony felt by ourselves and our manager, have led us to decide that we could not continue as we were. The announcement marked the end of one of the most successful and influential rock bands of all time. Led Zeppelin had been together for over a decade, during which time they'd released numerous classic albums, played countless legendary live shows, and helped to define the sound of hard rock. Despite the tragic circumstances that led to their breakup, the members of Led Zeppelin have remained friends and have continued to collaborate on various projects over the years. Today, Led Zeppelin is widely regarded as one of the greatest rock bands of all time, and their influence can be heard in the music of countless artists who came after them.
What's your personal or your professional ambition? Is it to be a guitarist all the time? Do you want to make your own record?
No, not necessarily. I'm very interested in art. I think I'd like to become an accomplished artist.
Rather than the guitarist?
Yes, possibly.
Is this a means to an end?